My name is Monica Gleberman, and you're listening to Silence on Set podcast. On today's podcast, we're talking to Callan McAuliffe and Cristina Spruell from a new film called About Him and Her. The film is so interesting and is kind of secretive, so the only thing I can really describe about it is that it's two strangers that meet through unusual circumstances after their phone lines cross. Other than that, you really need to see the film to really appreciate and understand what the actors did and what they went through. I will say this, the actors never met each other beforehand. So before you listen to this, if you're interested in finding out more about the film, please head over to Amazon Prime or Prime Video and rent or buy the film. It's called About Him and Her. Go watch it and then come back here and listen to their interview because it'll make much more sense after you see it. But we try not to reveal too many spoilers and we kept it very low key so that you could listen to this prior to seeing the film if interested. So to talk about the film, what we could talk about and a little bit about each of their careers, here's Callan. So we have to talk really quickly, obviously, because I'm sure everyone's going to ask you about it, but we have to talk Walking Dead. You were fantastic on that show. What was that experience like? I know you were kind of like the new kid a couple seasons ago. It all kind of like blurs into one show, doesn't it? So I feel like a couple years ago, you were like the new kid, and then you just became part of the family. And I just loved your character so much and cried so hard with
perfect.
How your character
I'm glad you cried. That's the happy end goal, I think.
I was so upset. I was so upset. But
I'm glad someone was upset. Makes me feel good. I must have been doing something right, I guess.
You were, because I did like the ugly cry, and I don't cry that much, so I did the ugly cry. So what was it like being on that show and just being a part of all of that and like the history of it?
Yeah, I mean, you can imagine it was a pretty wild experience. I upended and moved to Atlanta for it, so I was all in from the start. But it was a little nerve-wracking because, as you said, it's a big show. It had been going on for a while, and I was kind of the new kid on the block. Yeah, like you turn up and you feel a little bit like you're encroaching on somebody's territory, like you're the new kid in school, and then everyone's kind of looking at you slightly askance. That fell away very quickly because they were a very welcoming crew, very welcoming cast, and they pretty well made me feel like I was there from the beginning, even though they'd been going for a good, what was it, like 8 years before me, maybe more. Yeah, so to me it was kind of terrifying the first day. Day two, I felt like I'd been there my whole life.
Well, you did such a good job on the show. So I just had to mention, let's go through a few things. So I'll just do them really quickly because I want to get to your movie because I'm obsessed with it. But Homeland, you were in one episode, which we were fantastic in, by the way.
Yeah, that was wild. They flew me out to South Africa for that one. Like, I think I open a door and then I greet the lead for a moment. It's revealed that I'm some long lost family member. And then I disappear forever.
And then you were gone.
Some of the easiest work I've ever done. And I got to fly to Cape Town for it. It was nice.
That's amazing. But I just thought it was so cool because you were in Homeland. Like, I would have done anything. I would have been like a background person in Homeland. It was such a big show. So
yeah, it was great fun.
Homeland, so I'm looking at my notes now. Blow Your Own Trumpet. You were fantastic in multiple.
Oh, you saw Blow Your Own Trumpet.
I told you I'm a fan. I've seen everything. Yes, everything.
That's wild. I keep forgetting about that. That was fun. There was a couple of friends kind of got together and just decided to make this skit thing. A friend of mine, Lucy Green, is very talented. But yeah, it was good fun. No one's mentioned that ever in it.
Really? Oh my gosh, they're so good in it. Yeah. Oh no.
You've really done your research. This is great. Go on, please continue. Tell me.
I'll continue telling you how amazing you are. Hacker, fantastic. The Stanford Prison Experiment, one of my favorite all-time disturbing things ever because it's true. Summer Night.
Oh yeah.
Fantastic in that. The Walking Dead, I looked up. You were in over 55, or I think you were in 55 episodes.
Was it really?
Yeah, from 2017 to 2022.
I guess it makes sense because I was living in Atlanta for years, so it all kind of blends together eventually, but I had no clue it was that many episodes.
Tall Poppy, I noticed your voice.
Did you really?
It was your voice, right? Because you narrate it.
Yeah. That's amazing. Yeah, again, you're also the first person to mention that to me in an interview.
How are people not mentioning these things? They're so good.
I don't know, because they're sometimes harder to come by, or it's a smaller kind of role, and it's maybe.
I find it all. Big Sky.
Good on you.
You were in one episode, but you were fantastic in that episode. Loved your character.
Oh, thank you very much. I'm getting the sense that whatever I do, you're going to say it's fantastic. So I'm gonna have to call you up whenever I make something.
You're good in every single thing. Well, that's what I mean. That's why I was so excited to talk to you, because you're good in everything.
Oh, thanks very much.
I hear about Him and Her. So I'm like, okay, wait a minute. So he's starring starring in this film? What is this film about? What's going on? So this is the log line. And I don't want to give too much of the movie away.
Please.
I don't want to ruin anything. But the log line is cross phone lines in 1989 lead to a life-changing conversation between two strangers who eventually meet in an unusual way. And so I'm like, okay, listen, I love him. I'm going to watch it. I will gladly tell everybody. It's on Prime Video. I physically purchased it. They gave me a screener. I will own to everybody. They gave me a screener and I still purchased it. So I have it on mine forever.
Thanks very much.
So I wanted to ask you, just to start off with, I love that the characters are literally him and her. There's no name. When you start working on a piece like this, how do you develop a backstory in your brain if there's no name attached to it, or does that not matter at all?
I think to some people it matters a lot and to others not so much. I mean, in life, I suppose I'm a semi-believer in nominative determinism a little bit. I feel like a name is an important element of someone's character and you can kind of grow into it. In a way, it meant there was a little less for me to work with, but I don't think I've ever really factored it in when I'm playing a role. You could call it what you like, and I'm still going to read the lines the same, I expect. Him was enough. I don't know that it ended up being important to the story, really, because it's more about their relationship to each other. So for me, it wasn't a problem. You have to ask Cristina if what she thought, if you got a chance to interview her. But I kind of liked it. It was charming. It meant that my attention was elsewhere, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and I'm talking to her right after you, so.
Are you really? Oh, amazing. I'll have to text
yeah.
her. I got to try and catch her for dinner soon.
Okay, so that log line is a good log line to not give anything away, but the movie is so beautiful. So hopefully I'm going to do my best to not give anything away. But the movie starts off with two people that are in different apartments and they have like good old fashioned like landlines like we used to have. There's no cell phones, obviously, because it's back in the 80s or whatever. And the two of you are on the phone. And I remember this. So I don't know, like you're probably younger than me, but like I remember being on the phone and you would pick up the phone to make a phone call and static would come in sometimes and you would catch somebody else on the phone. And somehow your lines like cross over and you guys start communicating. And this to a whole friendship. So how did you guys work that out? Because a lot of it takes place on the phone.
Pretty much the entire first chunk of the movie takes place over the phone. Their entire relationship is built over the phone, which is one of the reasons I found the script so fascinating, because these characters are both going through their own private struggles and their own kind of different species of loneliness, I guess. And so the crossing of the phone lines is kind of a serendipitous thing that brings them together, and they were able to kind of confide in each other and take comfort in each other's presence, but just in one another's, I guess, in their essences, because there's no physicality. They don't see each other's faces over the phone, obviously, and they can't, hold each other or anything like that. So it's only what their voices can bring to bear, and that's what they take comfort in. And there's a kind of a unique beauty in that. And it's kind of neat that in today's day and age, so much of our communication is either faceless or at least at a distance. And so it's kind of a little bit of an early whisper of that, I guess. Yeah, I mean, that's one of the things that drew me to the project, was just this notion of these two people meeting and building a relationship entirely over the phone, at least for the first part of the film. On the set, I'm not sure how much they told you about the on-set experience, but
I've heard some.
You've heard some, yeah. I mean,
yes, I've heard that the phone, you were actually in another room, right? Is this true?
Yeah, so it is
told
true.
you I did my research.
You really have. Amazing.
Yeah, you were in another room on the phone for Cristina, and so and vice versa.
Exactly. So that was another thing. They told us that was going to happen from the beginning. So even from the audition stage, I was sort of aware of what they were gunning for. And then when I was cast, we were discussing kind of the ins and outs of it, logistics and everything. And I was doubly excited because we were going to be on set together, but in separate rooms, but still there for each other, as though we were kind of acting in the same space, except I would be a couple of walls away on an actual phone line. So we were also recording the organic kind of, the crispy sounds of the phone lines of that era. And I would be in one room, I'd hear them call action, and I'd deliver my lines down the phone. We wouldn't exchange any words that weren't scripted, except maybe the occasional like chuckle here and there because of how just absurd what we were doing was. And then I'd hang up and wait to hear rolling again, and then I'd call in for the scene. That was remarkable. Of course, we weren't able to interact at all because these two characters weren't supposed to have seen each other's faces. And that was, I suppose you might call it a gimmick, but for me, that was one of the most powerful ideas about shooting this movie, was that we wouldn't, at least in the beginning, get to interact at all, but through the lines that were written for our characters, who also weren't seeing each other. So, I didn't see her face, I didn't know her name, and all I knew was that I had to talk down this landline to someone who was being filmed in the other room, and she did the same thing for me.
It worked so well because just that one section, which is a good, like you said, a good chunk of the movie where you guys are talking back and forth on the phone, I felt like I was like secretly watching someone I shouldn't be watching. Like the way it was directed, the way it's like grainy, the shots of color between the two of you, it's dim lit
Mm-hmm.
room, it's like lit in another. I felt like I was like I don't know, like I felt like I was listening to a conversation I shouldn't be listening to. You know, like where you're like, oh no, like I like they're having a private conversation, because it was so beautiful how much you guys connected over the phone. And I thought it was like such a beautiful like love letter that like you guys just, and like you don't want to hang up, or it's so, I think I could say this. It was so cute. There's one scene where your character is getting stuff ready and you're like, just hold on one second. And you put the phone down and it's on your good old fashioned voicemail where we used to listen to our voicemails, and you're just playing as your mom's like,
yeah, my mother's just going through the motions of
giving you all these things, all these like messages she left. And you just like put the phone down. But it was so cute and it was so real and it was so realistic and it was so believable, because I feel like a film where you have two characters that are just talking on the phone could seem not realistic, or like could seem, oh, that's outrageous. Like they would have met her or they would have, but you see this.
It's also in danger of being very boring. Like there's a lot of really genius tricks that they wrote in there, and they, the techniques they use to shoot the film to keep you engaged, because a conversation between two people is usually only engaging for those two people. In order to make it work on camera, we had to do a couple of tricky things here and there. But yeah, little moments like that where you can make sort of quirky vignettes of a life around the phone conversation were things that were really fun to shoot. And I don't know if you remember the parts where I'm kind of doing activities in the house and like shooting bows and arrows and things, just occupying my body while I talk on this phone. But I was, to mention what you were talking about earlier, I was really impressed by the way they were able to differentiate our characters, like through their spaces and through the set dressing, which was really, really impressive. The different objects around their homes, kind of just telling this multi-layered story just through the environment alone, and also avoiding seeing our faces directly, so that you get that kind of fly on the wall sense that you're talking about, where you're almost secretly observing these characters as they talk and have these really intimate conversations, because of course they can't see each other's faces, so it's nice for the audience to be able to at least in part parallel that feeling. So again, that's another little element of it that I was excited, because I knew that going in too, that at least for the early parts the audience wasn't going to see us either. Kind of contriving that on set was a whole nother kettle of fish.
Yeah, and how did you guys do that? Because it is true, we don't see really a clear version of either of your faces for quite a bit, but I do think that was a great technique, because you are kind of, and I'm like this, like I was like, what? Because I'm like,
what does this son of a gun look like?
Yeah, and I'm like trying to look. I'm like, get near a lamp. Like I want to see. And I also love the heart. There's a heart on the wall that you're painting.
Oh yeah.
Like you're like splattering paint on it. It's such a typical guy thing. Like, not to all the guys, don't come at me, but for a guy to walk around and do things while he's on the phone, because guys don't normally.
Oh man, I do it all the time. That's true. If I'm on the phone over long, I'm just picking up random objects and putting them down for no reason.
But that's what I loved about it. So like he's walking around, he's like cooking breakfast. He's like, like you said, like playing with little toys and then painting, which I loved, by the way. But there's this great way, because we don't see you, that I'm like intrigued, but it also has like a bit of like sexiness to it. And then when we see like her character, it's the same thing. It's like we don't really see that much about her, and she's doing what we all girls do. We get super excited when a guy's on the phone. So she's like laying down and excited, or running around, or jumping up and down. Like, it's a very typical reaction of just being so excited to hear from somebody. And I just love that in all of that, on top of all of those things that you guys did, you add in the layer of what it feels like almost in a COVID world, what it feels like to be isolated, to feel like there's nobody there for you, to feel like you're alone, to be in, whatever emotional state you're in, and then to randomly have whatever force put two of you together to kind of work things out. I just thought it was just so beautifully done. The phone sections. I'm trying not to give anything else further than that.
Yeah. We're really walking on eggshells
hard.
here. I'm also not sure what I can reveal now that I think about it, because so much of the way that we shot it and kind of what happens later in the movie is integral, in my opinion, to the appeal of the film. And what we did was, as far as I know, unprecedented. I really hope that people kind of tune in and give it a go, because it is really wild. There's the story we told and the way we told it. I'm glad you liked it. I'm glad it worked out for you.
So, what was for you the most difficult thing, and what was the easiest thing that you were able to kind of get into when you were playing him or like filming? Because this was a very tricky, I can only imagine the magical things you guys had to do that were probably not so magical behind the scenes that made it look so good. But what was the most difficult and the easiest for you?
Yeah, there were a lot of elements to this shoot that were completely new experiences for me, even though I'm something of a seasoned, actor. I think one of the more difficult elements was just purely from a practical standpoint, was navigating this set that we were both on without being allowed to see each other. And of course, the whole conceit was that she and I would not interact nor meet, at least for the moments when we were not supposed to have done so as characters. And so we were using fake names on set. We were trying to avoid seeing each other in hallways. The crew was holding up sheets and cardboard and things to make just, around corners and peeking for us to make sure we never ran into each other and never locked eyes with each other. And so that was just sort of, like I said, practically quite difficult because it just meant we had to be more conscious of where we were and when we were turning up to set and when we would even leave a room. When we would go to the bathroom, we had to tell somebody. So it was a kind of, we had a lot of redundancies in place as well just to make sure that the whole film was never spoiled. Because in a way, the shoot was kind of a social experiment in and of itself. And so much of our passion for it and our positivity, it hinged upon this idea of us not meeting as actors. We didn't want to spoil that. And there was a real kind of just a general nervousness on set, like, oh fuck, I hope they don't meet. I hope this doesn't all kind of come to naught. And so we pulled it off in the end, but that was kind of tough. And then I think probably the easier stuff was for the week or so where we were shooting her stuff in her house while I was on the phone. I was just sitting in a room reading books, and there was like a little synthesizer in the room as well because it was kind of an old house. So I was just kind of playing the synth and reading these books. I think I was reading a book about the American whaling era called Leviathan.
Oh no,
and
things
playing,
are getting low. Oh no.
And playing on the synth, just looking out the window, just counting the birds that came by. It was in a way it was kind of relaxing because when someone would knock on the door and be like, "Hey, we're rolling," or the phone would. I think if I remember, it's been a while. We shot this in like 2018 or something, but I think the phone might have literally rung for me. And then I would pick it up, and then they would call action because we would already be on the phone at that time. So I would literally just sit in the room, wait for the phone to ring, and then do my acting. And also happily, distortion and the static down the phone line adds a kind of a texture to your voice. It's kind of like when you get aged up with prosthetic makeup. Like it does some of the work for you in terms of dynamic performance and depth and believability. And so the phone was kind of, doing some heavy lifting on my behalf, which is nice.
I wouldn't say heavy lifting. I think
moderate lifting.
you fine on your own, but I agree. I did like the add-on of it. That's what I mean. Like, there's like this sexiness to it. Like, and I don't know if that makes sense to you, but like when I watch it, I just feel like in this day and age, it's either like let's text somebody, let's go meet up, let's do this, and it was almost like using a phone as a love letter, right? Because I feel like a lot of people don't use love letters as much as they should anymore. And
sure.
In terms of film, I think those are the big romantic gesture movies, and you're like, nobody's gonna write that to you, or like no one's gonna sign. Whereas in this film, I felt so in it that I was like, I want someone to call me and like talk to me all day and want to ask what I'm doing and play music with me and like just do various things. And so to me, it was just that's what I like fell in love with, was the love of it being so normal for them to just have this conversation and build a relationship.
I mean, in a way, it's kind of a love letter to love. This movie. It's interesting you say that. I find that I have a similar experience to this whenever I'm talking to really dear friends over the phone. Sometimes I'll find that I end up talking to them for 3 hours at a time or so. It's not quite. I think the implication in this movie with all the different activities I'm doing and the passage of the sun throughout the film, it's quite a while that we're talking on the phone. Maybe even a couple of days. I forget exactly. But I haven't quite talked for that long to friends on the phone. But when it crosses a kind of the threshold of a couple of hours, you can't help but get involved elsewhere in your house. You're kind of just walking around getting things done. I love that feeling of just living with someone over the phone, just kind of going about your business while engaging with. It's kind of almost a detachment to it that's very honest, which I think we're also trying to kind of encapsulate here, is that they're being very free with each other.
Like, to me, it's crazy. So you had no idea who was hired either? Like, so you had no idea who was...
They had to contact our respective agents and managers and insist, arguably beg, because they couldn't, there was no obligation, but they had to beg, please don't tell your client who we've cast.
It's
because
almost
the
like
whole idea is, it's like a secret arranged marriage, exactly. So I wasn't allowed to know her name, nor she mine, and so we used fake names on set. My name was Booker DeWitt, which is a character from a video game I don't know if you ever played a game called BioShock Infinite, but the main character's name is Booker DeWitt. And I just thought it'd be fun to be called Booker for a month. And so everyone on set was referring to me as Booker. It just so that, and I think everyone on set also thought my name was Booker. I was introduced to them because it just helps to mitigate the likelihood of someone accidentally saying my name on set. Because, you can't choose what you hear. And so Cristina, whose name I didn't know at the time, might have heard someone say my real name accidentally, and then she'd be able to go and Google it, whether she wanted to or not, the urge is there, the desire is there. I don't know. If I had known her name, maybe I would have tried to look her up or something. So there was just that little countermeasure to make sure that really no one could, we had nothing to picture. We had no face in our minds. It was just kind of blank space. It was built by the words that we shared with each other, which is kind of nice.
Why this movie is so crazy how it was made, because it's just not normal. It's not normal to have like...
I don't know if I would advise it to anyone making movies in the future either. It's fascinating. I remember we did a couple of EPK kind of interviews once we wrapped, on the day we wrapped, and I hope we're able to put those together at some point and release them. But I remember the director asking me for this little on-set interview. He was like, how did this impact your connection to the actress and kind of the chemistry and that kind of thing? And I remember thinking about it and being like, it's fascinating. I don't think I've ever felt less connected to a co-star because we exchanged so few words. And so I'm quite pleased that there's a kind of a palpable chemistry on set, because that speaks to the skills of everyone involved. They were able to construct that because we didn't know anything about each other. We'd hardly exchanged any words at all. We hadn't gone to, usually you make a movie, you go out to dinner with the cast beforehand, everyone starts bonding, you try and build some native chemistry before you get onto the set. And we weren't able to do any of that. And so we were kind of just playing the cards that we had performance-wise and interpretation-wise. And we didn't really have any idea how it was going to look when we were side by side, vocally speaking. And so, I don't know, it was really strange and really challenging. And it presented a lot of unique hurdles that we were able to leap, but that in the end, you don't need on a set. So, as much as I'm glad that I did it, and I think it's a beautiful experience, I wouldn't advise it for other filmmakers, because it's also like it costs so much in time and money. And it was a real mission. And I'm so proud of everyone for getting through it.
It's so amazing to me because when you guys, I think I could say this again without getting in trouble, because it is on Prime Video. So everybody please go rent it, buy it, rent it, buy it, rent it, buy it. It's so good. But I think I could say this. I mean, eventually the characters do meet. What is surprising?
Yeah, maybe we should have said that tantalizingly at the beginning. Like that is so. The idea, like they're on the phone.
Yes,
they're on the phone and they're like, oh, we like each other a lot, we're lonely, etc. And then they go, you know what we ought to do is we ought to meet up. We gotta meet. But the whole idea is, wait a minute, we've built this love over the phone, facelessly, and it's in its most honest form. So maybe we shouldn't fuck that up, and when we meet, we shouldn't see each other. And so I'll leave it there. That was one of the most extraordinary parts of the movie, was that we get on set and we have to keep up this fucking charade, and we have to still not look at each other, but we're not only are we kind of talking to each other from the same general area, like a few rooms away, we're actually in the same room, still unable to look at each other, having to interact physically and having to sort of breathe each other's air without knowing each other's names or seeing each other's faces, and having to either close our eyes, wear blindfolds, or have our view obscured by some crew member with a sheet of cardboard. And it really was an otherworldly experience, because it's not something that you do at any other point in your life, really. And it was kind of very alien, but in a way, the unusual nature of the experience bonded us more than anything else ever could. That was after the fact.
But it's so crazy because it works so well. It also shows me too, like, in terms of talking on the phone, we were mentioning, just like the humanity and the connection and being alone and being able to communicate, and it's okay to communicate and express how you feel. And that's what you guys kind of do. It's kind of goes with the same way that in real life, you guys don't know each other. You go into this room when you meet and do experience things there. I'm trying not to give anything away, but with you guys in the same room, there's still that connection there, which is something that is a magical thing, because we're all human. And you guys had been on the phone doing, even though you're saying lines, had been doing that for months. You had been in separate areas. You had been, like, you know what I mean?
Well, I think it doesn't take much to unite people. If anything, kind of a shared unusual experience or some kind of a shared trial is one of the stronger glues known to man. Yeah, exactly. And so the fact that we'd gone through this frankly outrageous process for the last couple of weeks, like over the phone and everything, we were bonded maybe in a way that wasn't super tangible or available to us at that time, in terms of how we could use it on camera or even talking to each other, because we weren't allowed to. But there was an air about the room of, this is crazy and we're all in this together, because of course we were able to talk to and look at the crew, just not each other, but we were able to gauge from them the general feeling of the thing and quietly inquire as to how the other person was feeling. They were very careful not to ever reveal anything, but you could see from a glint in someone's eye here and there, or kind of just from the way that they were responding to a scene, how things were going. So only through those kinds of
contextual inferences could I really understand what was going on. But it was a wild adventure.
Well, I want to ask you two kind of final questions for this film because it was done so abstractly and different. Again, it works so well. But for you as an actor, I feel like you, for the things that I've seen you in, I feel like you like to challenge yourself because you kind of go from extreme to extreme where it will be very different characters or they're put in different scenarios. And so for this one in particular, this is another one that's kind of a different scenario for you as an actor. Do you enjoy doing things that could be kind of scarier, like a first time thing, or because this has never really been done before as far as I know? I did some research and tried to find something similar. There's nothing that matches what you guys did.
Yeah, I mean, all actors ought to be open to being challenged. Otherwise, you're barring yourself from really arguably the greatest joys of this industry, which is to occupy the shoes of people that you'll never meet and could never know. And that's kind of really the great privilege, is to explore those stories so bodily and so wholeheartedly. But yeah, I mean, this is by far the most challenging thing that I think that I've done. I think it's commonly understood by people that actors get to, choose their own roles and kind of cultivate their own careers. But I really haven't had a hand in the timeline of my movies. I've never kind of sought them out. They've found me. You kind of do a bunch of auditions until one works out and you hope that you like it. And it's fortunate that I was as passionate about this one as they were about me when I auditioned. And there was that lovely kind of alignment of interest, which doesn't always happen. Oftentimes you're just kind of, casting a net out there, doing as many auditions as possible. And then when one comes through, you're very grateful, whether you care for the material or not. And so I haven't really take credit for any curation in that sense, and sort of choosing different things and versatility and trying to, I guess, pull together an interesting suite of different characters. If you've seen that, I'm glad. That's by happenstance alone. This was certainly among the more challenging, transformative roles that I've had to take on.
It's so funny because over the years of interviewing actors, they're horrible compliments. And then it's just so funny because if I watch a body of work, like I'll talk to an actor and a lot of times they go, I feel like I was the same person, like in every single thing that I did. Like I didn't do anything different.
Yeah, I was trying to avoid just being contrarian, but I do feel that way. I'm just me with an American accent most of the fucking time.
But no, because like when I watch it, I see something different, but I understand. I understand why, because it's not.
But that's a testament so often to every other piece of a film and all the other people that put their craft into it, is because you watch an actor's performance and you're seeing or you're absorbing so many details sort of unconsciously. You're unwittingly charging this actor's performance with context clues and with environmental clues and this kind of cues, rather. And so there's a lot that goes into building a performance. And so it is nice to know that through all of that, I've apparently got a kind of a versatile thing going on here. But what I'm doing is fundamentally the same. I'm just kind of I'm interpreting the script, I guess, to my own satisfaction, and hopefully it works out. But I'm glad that things feel, each one feels different to you. That's nice to hear.
You have to call me and I'll just give you compliments every day until you get used to it.
Well, I think that one of the reasons that actors aren't very good at receiving compliments is because they don't really believe them. Because a good chunk of our careers, especially when you're dealing with publicity, well, not only is it rejection, but when it's the other side, it's constant affirmation. I suppose at a certain point, you can't help but be suspicious, that kind of thing.
Yeah, like either one is not.
Yeah, also because it wouldn't make much sense for you to hop on this interview here with me and tell me that you actively despised everything that I had made. You're like, this is an obligation for me to be here. I really don't want to talk to you. It is what it is. I do appreciate it, but I also can't fully believe it.
But you can fully believe it because it's my own show, so I wouldn't have you on.
That's true. In this instance, you've gone out of your way to rope me in here, and I'm glad you did, because you're a fun interview. It's nice. It's kind of conversational and relaxing. I enjoy it.
Well, thank you. My final question is, what are you hoping people get out of watching this movie, because it is so different? But even just like going off the log line of what it is about, like just on a basic level, what are you hoping people watch and take away from it?
These questions are always so interesting because I guess it's so hard to predict what someone will take away from any film. I hope that they're aware. This is going to sound maybe too surface level, but it was such a wild experience. I just want people to see it, just because I want them to see the end result of this crazy adventure that we all went on together. And I do think it's a film like no other. And I think it's worth watching by dint of that fact alone. It's a different medium that we're telling the story in, Yeah, like I said, really by dint of that fact alone, I think it's worth seeing. But what you take away from it is beyond me to guess or even to hope for. I feel like it's just a good movie. And that's all that matters, really. And also I was part of the editing process as well. I think the one that's up on Amazon right now is the edit that I did with the director. You know, I've got a hand in the post-production as well, which is a rare thing for me. Also ill-advised, directors, don't let your lead actors edit your movie. That's another wild thing to do. This was a series of firsts in this film. So I really hope that people just enjoy it.
And here's Cristina.
So really quickly, so basically we have you on here because we have this amazing movie that I'm obsessed with, which is About Him and Her. It's currently right now. So if you're listening and you have no idea what I'm talking about, go to Prime Video. You can rent it super cheap or buy it. I recommend buying it because you're going to want to watch it more than once. But go watch the movie, okay? So if you're listening to this right now, stop what you're doing, go rent the movie, go watch it. It is worth watching, and then come back and listen to us. Or if you want to watch it after and hear us talk about it, we will not give away any major spoiler to the movie, so you can listen to us and then go watch the movie and go buy it. So Prime Video, it's available right now. And the movie, I read this before when I was talking to Callan about it. The movie has a log line that says, cross phone lines in 1989 lead to a life-changing conversation between two strangers who eventually meet in an unusual way. So basically, for everybody, and you're probably too young for that. I'm old, so like you're probably too young for this, but back in the day, we had these phones. So this is kind of what the movie's about, a loose premise. We had these phones that were like attached to the wall. They had like the little round cords. You guys have all seen them that's listening. Don't act like you haven't seen it. And we used to use those all the time to, make phone calls. And eventually there were even the phones that would sit in which now they're kind of common, but that would sit in like a little electrical like box, and you would pick that up and you'd make your like little call. But the technology was so new that every now and then you would pick somebody up. Like I would hear my neighbor. I used to hear my neighbor all the time. So I would hear my neighbor on the phone and I'd be like, get off the phone. I'm talking about like I'd be like yelling, and they can hear you and they would talk back to you, and there would be like some weird sort of interference. I don't know when that stopped or how it stopped, or maybe people still get it, who knows. But this film is basically about that. It's two people that are living their life. They're both on the phone making a regular call, dealing with issues, and their lines cross over and they start talking, and that develops into what becomes ultimately the movie. And we follow these two people, and without giving the second half away, I kind of stuck to the first half, which was a majority of the time you guys are talking on the phone. So I wanted to ask you, so when I spoke with Callan, he had said, he was like, I don't know how much you heard about what we did on set. And I was like, oh, I heard some things. He said that basically it was, and I started laughing. I said, it was almost like you guys were getting married. You were basically sequestered. And this is the first time I've ever heard of this. I've heard of people not seeing each other before they got on set. I know this is a random fact, but I know like for Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, I know the kids didn't, like, when they opened the door to the chocolate factory room, I know like the kids never saw it. That was like their initial like reaction, like so that they could catch it on film. So I know that they've used that technique in the past, but they've never done something like to your extreme, which is you guys were sequestered, did not know who each other were. You each had bogus names, never met, were in different rooms, and really spoke to each other on the actual phone.
Yeah, on an actual landline.
On an actual landline. And throughout the entire process, to a point where I think he said, if I'm not mistaken, he did not physically meet you in person and know who you were till about almost 2 years later.
Exactly. Yeah. Yes.
So what? Explain to me on your end, how does this happen? So you audition for the character and her name is Her, and then you're told, we're not going to tell you who you're with. We're going to do all these things. When you hear all these crazy kind of, this is our idea, what was going through your mind as to how this is going to work? How is chemistry going to get formed? How are we going to do this?
I wasn't even concerned about chemistry or logistics. It was so out there and creative and bizarre that I was like, 100% I'm in, let's do it. Because I love things like that. And I love secret finding out things. So the script was actually blacked out for parts of it because they didn't want to reveal too much. There's a scene where we draw each other. We're explaining what each other looks like when we draw each other. And it was all blacked out. So I went inside of a document and I highlighted it underneath the blacked out part and I pasted it onto another document to see what was actually happening because I'm just that crazy detective person inside me.
He's like, oh, see, now Callan was good because he said he did not, or he didn't admit it, but he said he did nothing. So you were like sneaking to try to get some information, because the part that you're talking about, and obviously we'll get into the movie, but there's this scene where the two of you are going to meet, and without giving anything away, how can I say this? So you guys are going to meet and you can't see each other. So as a kind of fun game, because of the circumstances you're in, because you can't see each other, how the room is set up, you guys decide to draw each other by description. And so you're
Yes.
back to back and you're drawing each other. So that's the part you're talking about. So in the script, if you had read what he's telling you, like, I have blonde hair, I have this color eye, you might be able to sort of put together like, who the hell am I acting with, and like, what does he look like, and things like that.
That part was improvised, the actual description of what we looked like, but what wasn't was like, reach under your chair and grab the colored pencils. And so
Okay.
the stuff leading up to it, but the director didn't want us to know because he wanted it to be a surprise when we got to set. But just for the record, I didn't ever peek at Callan. I never looked at him. I wasn't gonna ruin it that way because they spent so much energy and effort, and I looked at him or found out who he was, I would get in so much trouble, but also I would just ruin the whole premise and idea of the film. Like Callan, he gave the producer a book for me to read while, during downtime. And so I was like trying to figure out if he left me a message or a hidden code. So anything I written or I received, I was just kind of scanning to see if there was some sort of secret hidden message, but there was none. There was no secret message.
What book did he give you?
Oh gosh, I wish I remembered the title. I know it was about,
it about
whales.
Oh my God,
Yeah.
When I was talking to him, he was saying, he was like, I'm so sequestered. And he was like, I was starting to read stuff, and he said some book about whales, and I was like, wow. I was like, were you getting to it like a crazy point, or like, were you okay? And then he was like, no. He's like, it was so great because it was so silent and quiet and peaceful. And I was like, I don't know if it's peaceful if you're reading about whales, but so that's funny. So he read it, and I guess he gave it to you to read.
Yes. And I thought maybe he'd circle every fourth letter to tell me, I don't know, some secret. I was a little disappointed that he wasn't on board with the secret decoded message. I wasn't trying to figure out who he was, I swear. I just, just to like keep talking secretly or something. I don't know.
When we start the movie off with you guys, like I said, crossing over on the landline, and for me it was kind of like a sexy story, because you watch all these like rom-coms or romantic movies and they send these letters, and like, listen, that's all nice and I would love that. It is unfortunately like 2023, and I don't really feel like many men send these type of love letters and do these kind of things that they should be doing. Hint to any men listening. So I found it so romantic that these two that have no idea, they're from different places, they're talking on the phone, and then they start talking and start a conversation, but keep going and build all of this chemistry over the phone, getting to know someone almost like the good old days of like you're on the phone where it's like modern, right? Because you're not seeing each other, but it's still like kind of sexy that like you're having all this chemistry without really physically meeting, and to get to know somebody mentally beforehand before physically seeing them. So for you to not know who you're acting with and to be called her, right? So you don't even have a name necessarily. How do you prepare for scenes like this where you're in a weird, like, it's just such a weird scenario to hear, to think like you're talking to an actor you don't know. You have to have some sort of chemistry on the phone, and there's so much secrecy around everything. So how do you block all of that out and create what you guys did, which was, I feel like, one of the most sexiest like kind of phone get to know each other conversations in the first half of the movie?
I think because we had no idea who each other were, it wasn't even acting at that point because it was so real. I mean, yes, it was scripted, most of it, but we were on the phone and saying the lines to each other for the first time, and it felt unscripted just because it was, I think we both just fell into those characters so quickly and where they were, and it was very easy. It was very easy. I mean, and we weren't even allowed to go outside of the script and talk because the director was afraid that we would hate each other, not like each other, not have anything in common. So I think I told you this before that we had our little communications, our alien communication. That's all we could do and had. But yeah, there was still a connection, thankfully. And I honestly think that's Callan's talent. He's a really easy actor to work with, and he brings a lot.
I think it's both of your talents. The movie is just, I just find it so bizarre, the circumstances they put you in, but
Yes.
yet it makes so much sense. So
Did you know that it's a true story? Did you know this actually happened
so I was
to
actually going
Ice?
to ask you this. I heard rumblings, but I didn't know if that was true or not. So this is a true story. So Ice is the director. So what's true about it? That this whole thing happened to him,
He
or
was on a call. There were cross phone lines. They talked, 24 hours and then decided to meet up. When they met up, then they decided not to actually see each other the whole time. And in Chicago, I forget what hotel it was at. So he thought, maybe that this girl who, I don't want to give the story away, but, he would somehow find her again. So that would be crazy if that could reach her and they could reunite, because it's truly incredible. And I think they in real life they were both going through a lot and healed, and in that friendship that they had.
I mean,
Pretty crazy.
I guess because Ice lived through it, it makes so much sense, to be in my exact position. I was in a room, they were in a room, like that whole thing. And for it to be him and her, I thought was such an ingenious thing, because while you guys are talking, you never really talk about your names. You never really go over you don't go over the minutia. And if you do, it's kind of off camera. You go over the important things that you guys are going through emotionally, things that you're dealing with. I want to ask you two kind of stupid questions. One is that, so I heard that there were set names because you guys had to have some sort of name for them to call you because you guys were undercover. And, I heard producers, cast, anybody that was on set would call you by this name. So Callan chose one that was from a video game.
Yes.
So you were calling him.
They wouldn't even tell me his code name.
Oh, they didn't.
That's how secretive it was. But I found out his code name when we met at the premiere, which was Booker DeWitt or something like that.
Yeah.
He's like, yeah, it's from a video game. You probably wouldn't know. I was like, BioShock Infinite, and he's like,
see, that's what he said to me. He was like, so I picked a video game, and then the second he said the name, he was like, I'm not sure if, and I was like, from a video game. I was like, yes, I know exactly who you chose. So he went by Booker, which I guess you didn't know, but he said that everybody was calling him by that name to make sure that nobody slipped and made a mistake. So I got to ask, what was your name?
So my name was Kelly Casper. I chose Casper, and ISA director chose Kelly because I had no idea what to have as a first name. And he thinks that her name, or the original her, might have been Kelly. I don't know. This was so many phone conversations that has happened over this name, but I think that's the story on the name. Everybody ended up just calling me actress because it was just confusing. So they'd be like, actress, move to the left, or like, actress, close your eyes, actress, turn around. So mostly it was just actress.
I'm so fascinated by this whole process. So, but I love that. So you were Kelly, aka actress, aka her.
Yeah, exactly. I responded to all of it.
They would just be like, hey, and you're like, yep. What do you need? What's going on? So that was one question I had because he had brought up his name. My other question for you was, I really enjoyed a scene in the very beginning of the film when the two of you were on the phone, and he's like, when you don't want to hang up with somebody, so he's like, can you hold on a second? And he puts the phone down, and it's on a voice recorder. I can't even think what they're called anymore nowadays, but I still have one. But where you used to take tape and it would record your voicemails, and he puts you down, and his mom is he clicks play, and his mom's messages are over and over and over and over again. And so you're sitting listening to his mom leave him messages. And I just was dying laughing because I felt like it's such a sense of comfortability with somebody to be like, yeah, that's all right. My mom's annoying. She's leaving me all these messages. I'm just going to drop the phone here for a second. And he's cooking and doing whatever he's doing. I found so much humor in that. And he's kind of running around the room and doing things while he's on the phone with you. But what I enjoyed so much with your character was that you were the epitome of a woman that's excited, because you were on the bed running around when you guys decide to meet, and again, I won't give out too much information, but you're dressed like to the nines. You're like jumping up and down like in the hall. Like I love that scene when you're like so excited that like that you're gonna meet him and all of that kind of stuff. So what was that like for you to play like the woman perspective of just being excited to have a conversation with someone and talk and emotionally connect, and then that feeling of, oh my God, the insecurity of we're gonna meet. Like, what is this going to be like?
Well, I love love, and it's not just a love story either. It's finding this cool, unique friendship. And it is, as you were saying, finding somebody that you're comfortable with, just sitting down and being like, hold on, listen to my mom. Because that's, I think, called a soulmate or, a soul friend. And that's very rare to find. And yeah, so at that point in my life, I haven't experienced something like that. So I love living vicariously through these characters. But then serendipitously, I had the same experience with my who is now husband, and our first date was actually May 30 years exactly from the date that Ice was in the hotel with his soul friend. So it was like May 26, 1989, and May 26, 2019, I met the love of my life. And that night we're like, let's elope and get married, which is kind of crazy that this film has so many little intricacies and little moments like that have happened after my life even, which is crazy.
Well, I think that's why it's so relatable, because when you like, Callan had made a point where he said something like this film could be considered boring, right? Like initially you could read the page and go, oh my gosh, like who's going to want to hear a phone conversation for, half an hour or whatever it is? Who's going to want to hear this and that? And he's like, you can get bored very easily with a movie like this. And I said, yeah, but it was the way that you guys did it. It was not boring. I told him I felt like I was like, and he kind of worded it better than me. He's the actor. I said I felt like I was in the room, and he was like, yeah, like a fly on the wall. I said, exactly. Like the way it was filmed, the way the camera moves, the gradient, the way that your room, apartment, whatever, looks different. It's brighter, it's lighter. He's more of a guy, dingier, like kind of like darker setting. I just was like, I was in. I felt like I was listening to a private conversation, and I wanted to know like everything. I wanted to know all the information, all the details. So to me, it wasn't boring at all. And in fact, I got nervous when they decided to meet. And I know it sounds crazy, but everything's going so well. So I was going, oh no, like if they meet, is this going to screw everything up? But for you, were you nervous when you read the script that for a majority of the film, you're kind of in one location and you're on the phone? Were you nervous that some people might go, like I'm on the phone for a long time. They're not gonna stay interested in like what we're doing.
Sure. I knew that people are either going to love it or hate it because it's very unique in the way it's made. And even there's my family, they're like, we tried watching it, but we don't see your face. I'm like, guys, like just go on this journey with these characters, because I promise you hang in there and you'll be like, wow, okay, we're glad that we stayed and kept watching. But I know that my family just isn't into artsy romance drama. But so it's certainly, if you love In the Mood for Love and, Richard Linklater, the Begin series, all of those movies, it's definitely a niche film. So that intrigued me. But yeah, I knew that people weren't going to like it, but that doesn't matter.
See, and that's so funny that your parents were like, yeah, but we don't see your face, because ironically, I love that. But again,
Me too.
But like you, it's an artsy thing maybe. I loved it. So when you guys are talking on the phone, there's this really cool creative way that I guess like Ice and like some of the other people, like maybe Independence, how she wrote it, and I know Ice wrote some of it, where there's like shadow, maybe the cinematography, like however it was done, but there's like shadows and stuff where like we don't really get a full face. I mean, these side face, you can kind of tell. And like, if people have seen Callan before in The Walking Dead or in various things, like you're going to know who he is. Like when you're watching the film, it's not like it's like black and we don't see anybody's face,
right?
But it's but it's done in a way where it's like, that's not the focus. But to me, that makes sense, because that's not the focus. The focus is the conversation and
exactly
not between the two of you. So it didn't really matter what either of you look like. And also, isn't that the point of the film? Like, that it shouldn't matter what either of you look like. So like,
exactly. Yes.
So to me, it made perfect sense that you guys were kind of sort of hidden and things were in the way, and we never really got a full shot of your face, for the first half of the movie.
And that's what you're doing if you meet somebody over the phone. You don't know what they look like, and you have all these ideas. So I think it's pretty cool.
I want to go back to the part that you brought up. We didn't talk much about the second part of the film, which is when you guys meet, because I don't want to give anything away. But I have to talk about a little bit of the sexiness that happened. You guys aren't talking necessarily in the scenes like overtly to make it sound like you guys are doing something together at the same time, but it's kind of like insinuated that like there's a little bit of bathroom time for both of you at the same time in a scene, almost like revealing yourself even though you guys aren't in the same room, but it's done in a very like sensual way. So I wanted to know, just from a viewer perspective from watching it, were you guys on the phone? So was that like a mutual like thing between you two? Like, so was that these two kind of going, let's take our relationship to the next level even though we've never met situation?
Yes. So in one edited version, there's many edited versions of this movie. It's actually not in the version on Amazon Prime. They do a one-word story, which was also blacked out in the script, and I had to, do my detective skills to find out what it was. So we do the one-word story, and then a one-word story kind of becomes very, very sexy. And so, yeah, I think they just start vibing. And yes, we were both on the phone for that.
Woo! Okay, that's all. Because I was watching it and I was like, I really hope they're kind of like, I'm not gonna lie, and people that are listening are gonna think I'm so weird, but if you watch the movie, you understand why I liked it. Like, it's not like I just like this weird sexy part in it, but it was very sensual, and like the way that you guys filmed it, and because you guys are in different apartments, you guys, it's hard to explain unless you watch this film, but like you guys do things in a different way. Like, so he gets undressed in a certain way, and like you like are dressed in a certain way, and it's just very man and very woman, if that makes sense. And this connection. So the whole time I was going, I have to ask if they were on the phone, because like, and I didn't get a chance to ask Callan because I asked him all sorts of other crazy stuff, but I was like, I'll ask Cristina on the phone during this part.
So after the bath, we were on the phone, but not during the bath, if that makes sense. I mean, in the movie, yes, they're supposed to be on the phone. They stayed on the phone the whole time, but we weren't on
like not
each
in
other's
real life.
bath.
Yes, in real life, you guys weren't like sitting on the phone talking to each other. But I just find that scene very sensual, and I think that for a scene to be very sensual and very sexy, and you guys aren't even in the same room, you're doing something right. Because I was watching and I was going, ooh, like, oh my gosh, and I was like, they're taking it to the next level, and that takes a lot, because again, we rely so much in movies on physical touch and on seeing each other, and for this film, again, for the first majority of it, first half, even more than half of it, you don't have any of that, and yet you still have so much intimacy and so much sexuality and like so much love, like kind of between the two. Like I loved it. So I had to bring up that scene because it was very sexy. You both looked great.
Thank you.
So you looked great doing it. I give a lot of props for doing a scene like that. But
yeah, that's their little baptism, cleansing, healing moment.
Yes,
and then they start.
I was like, yes. And then I was like, maybe they should be. I was like changing my mind. I'm like, maybe we should get together. So I love that scene. But I want to go to the scene you were talking about, because we haven't talked a lot about the second half of the film where they decide to meet. And again, I'm going to be very careful with what I say here because I don't want to give anything away. But the scene that you're talking about. So because the room, I'm just going to go with that. I'm going with sort of a lot. Because how the room is set up, they cannot see each other. And they both kind of are okay with that. And, they're nervous, insecure, all the things that you feel when you've been talking to someone you're finally going to meet and you're just like not ready yet, and you're like, I don't know. So given where they're located and how it's set up, it's okay for that to happen. So they actually don't see each other, so they're sitting back to back like you said, and they're told to, I thought it was so cute, they're told to like draw each other, like, what do you think I look like, what do you think I look like? And so you're sitting back to back not seeing each other, and you basically go, okay, so I have like, I think it's Callan's character, so him says, I have triangle nose, because I think it's your character that says, well, is it like an upside down triangle or is it a regular triangle? So like, it was just such a cute, sweet scene. And then, what color's your hair? And he's like, well, it's like blonde and like fluffy, like a swoosh. And like, I just started laughing, and it was such a sweet, innocent, beautiful scene with the two of you back to back that way. I wanted to ask you what it was like filming that scene, and also how did they keep you guys sequestered? Because Callan told me even like if you had to go to the bathroom, there were people keeping you apart. So you're in this room together. How did you not see each other as well doing that?
So to get to the chairs in that specific scene, okay. Oh, well, first that scene was very fun to film, and that was the most improvised moment of the whole film. So it was more. I think we got to get each other's personalities a bit more, and have a little bit more fun and banter back to back. And to get in those, I remember we just had to close our eyes and feel the chairs, and then there were some PAs that would guide us to sit down. But if one of us had to use the restroom, they'd have a blanket, and two people would hold up a blanket, and I'd have to close my eyes, so it was like double protection. And then one would leave the room, and then they would drop the blanket while if we were both not there. So yes, lots of blindfolds, blankets, people always with somebody, always had to be with us on a walkie-talkie and be like, actor coming in, actress coming in. It was wild.
It's just like, again, it's like so mind-blowing to me, but I love that scene. Is there a favorite scene of yours that you can, if it's in the second part, you can maybe tease it, but if it's in the first part, you can talk about it. Is there a favorite scene of yours from the film that you're like, I love it? And I know there's been multiple cuts of this movie, so were you like, this has to stay in, please stay in, please stay in, because you were just in love with the scene?
I love so much about it. There was some great dialogue that we've had to cut that I like, really random, silly things. I think there was a moment about vacuum therapy, like just vacuuming because like people should go to a place and just vacuum for, I don't know, healing. Silly dialogue like that I would probably have a conversation about with somebody because it just makes it very human and real. And so that was, but a scene that made it in a movie. I love the song. It fades into the moment that you reveal our faces, and then we're holding hands and closing our eyes, and we're just both, because that was the actor's first time being in each other's presence as well. So it's so real. Those emotions are real. It was so easy to act because there wasn't even any acting to do. My hands were actually sweaty. Yeah, but Callan's line about, are you wearing a zoo? I love that line. That was improvised by Callan. He's just so witty and charming and smart, and yeah.
Oh, damn
That's
him.
my favorite
Right?
part.
I mean, like, could he be more perfect? That man.
I know.
I really loved the 1, 2, 3, like 3, 2, 1 or whatever, and he's like, we do a lot of countdowns.
Yeah.
And you're like, why don't we like spell it out? And so you guys are literally like FOURTHREE, and people will understand what we're talking about when you see the film. But I started laughing. But again, it's so sweet. So it's like you're laughing because it's funny, but it's also so sweet and endearing that you can understand like where they're both coming from. And that was one of my, I mean, there's so many favorite scenes that like I'm kind of listing a bunch of them to you, but like I love that scene when you're like, I think it's your character that says like, why don't we spell them instead of doing like 3, 2, 1 or 1, 2, like whatever. And I thought it was so cute. What else is cute too is the fact that you're both like a little quirky, like you're both a little, like the characters are both a little quirky, both a little kind of weird, but like in a good way, and like both dig each other and are just open to do whatever. I feel like if I didn't know somebody and I was talking to him for a really long time, and then we show up, and then he's like, I don't want, like, given our circumstances, whatever, we can't see each other, and then we're sitting, and then he's like, let's count out for 3. I would be like, something's weird, but you guys, it works. You know what I mean? Like it just works in the scene, and it works really well. I love that scene. I laughed very hard during that part because it was so cute and sweet.
So many cute moments. I love the grape throwing scene. That was a lot of fun to film. That was very real. I mean, we were actually throwing grapes at each other and had no idea where they were going. But yeah.
So what is your hope? So like this film is so different, as we've kind of spoken about. We don't want to give too much away, but what is your hope when people rent it on Prime Video right now or buy it? We're gonna keep plugging it. Hopefully it'll be in movie theaters at some point. But what is your hope when they see it that they take away from it? Is it the connection that you can have with someone? Is it humanity? Like what is, because there's so many layers to this film. So what is like the biggest thing that you hope someone who walks out and goes, ooh, I'm looking at that differently now because I saw this movie?
I don't want to sound too cliche, but you know how everything happens for a reason, and their lines were 100% meant to cross. And I don't want to give it away, but it ends up how it's supposed to. And they got through something really hard and traumatic for both of them through each other. So yeah, I think if people go and watch it and maybe something didn't work out the way that it was supposed to, but I really think that everything is supposed to happen how it should.
Yeah, I like that. Everything happens for a reason. And even if it's not good, or even if it is good, we all have to go through the motions, right? So it will get to a good place. Everything's going to be okay at some point. point.
Right.
No matter what happens or where you are in life, like I was saying this earlier, you guys are so isolated. You're both going through something, and look at like the serendipitous of you guys being on the same phone call, right? So just look at that as life. Like if you're going through something, reach out to someone, talk to a friend. There might be someone else that's going through it, or you might come across somebody in your life and you haven't seen them for a while. And like I feel like all of that is meant to be for some reason. And this movie, I feel
Absolutely.
like instills that, you know, that
Yes.
there's reasons for things. And sometimes it's okay to block it, and sometimes to just walk past it and be like, I'm not into it. But when you're open to it, it's really interesting to see what happens. And I think that's what this movie kind of shows, is what happens when you're kind of open to the unexpected.
Absolutely.
But I want to ask you too, because everyone will probably be like, well, what happened? So I'm curious. I heard it from a male's perspective, but what happened when you finally met Callan? First of all, did you know who he was? Did you watch like The Walking Dead or any of his previous shows? Because he's been in a bunch of stuff. Or did you have absolutely no idea who he was? Did he live up to what you were expecting in your brain? Because you guys are so much like the characters in that sense that you guys didn't know who each other were.
So you know how we talked about cross phone lines and there's that static? Well, there was some interference when I was on the phone with him at the apartments. So there was some Latin music playing, and I thought the actor was playing music while we were running lines. So I thought he was maybe Latin or Spanish. I was shocked he was from Australia and a white guy. I don't think I had seen any of his movies. So I didn't know.
I have no idea who you are, but it's nice to meet you. I didn't ask him. He might not have seen yours. I mean, you have an impressive amount of work too. He might have not realized who you were either.
No, definitely not. I don't think either of us knew. Yeah, and it's cool because we didn't know, you know, simple things like where each other was from and what our favorite color was. So to get to after the premiere to just talk and like find out the real person behind the voice, it was really cool. I ended up liking Callan more than the character because it was just, you know, dialogue and he had this Brooklyn or some sort of accent going on. Not that I didn't like the accent or anything, but Callan is a charming individual as well as his character, and yes, he lives up to it and more.
You're like, the struggle is real to explain how I felt when I saw him. You're absolutely right. I think he does have it is like a New Yorky, Brooklyn-y, because he's in Chicago. His character's supposed to be in Chicago, right? He's the one.
Yeah, or it could be a Chicago.
Yeah, so he has like a little, but he has like I'll side with you a little bit there. Like, Callan, don't get mad at me, but I do think there's a little New Yorky, which is okay.
Yeah.
Like, we sound similar. Yeah. Similar. I'm from New York. There's a similar accent there. Yeah, to go from that to like he has like an Australian US accent, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
like, it's not a full Aussie, and I think it's because he's worked so much getting away from it. He's had to do the American accent, but it comes out funny, like when he's talking, so as he's saying words, like his cadence is interesting. Like sometimes the little Aussie words will come out, and people will hear it in the podcast. But when I was talking to him, it was very funny. So for a second, I was like, he's from Australia, but he's like talking so American. But you know, years and years of doing that probably kind of screws up. I'm sure when he goes home, it clicks, you know, right back in.
Oh yeah,
he's talking like heavy. But his character is very charming in the movie, and he's very charming in real life and adorable and stuff like that. So I'm sure, you know, meeting him, I feel like you were probably how your character was, like nervous and excited and just going, I hope we get along, and like we have to film, and like I hope it goes well. So cute that the two of you bonded, and then he bonded with your family.
Oh yeah, yeah. He came and met my daughter and bought her a little Christmas book that she still has, and he's very sweet, and he's as you know, he's in town right now, so we're gonna have dinner, and yeah. So it's cool that we can stay in touch, and also cool that nobody else in the whole entire world has that experience,
right?
You know, that's shared between the two of us. So that's pretty special. I think
it's amazingly special. It has been such a joy getting to know the two of you through this process. I had interviewed, you know, Callan a couple times for The Walking Dead, but in terms of this movie, I don't know. It has such a special place in my heart. I just love it so much. I love everything that you guys did with it, and the amount of dedication that the two of you did to really not see each other and to really stick to what Ice wanted and the writer's independence and nice, and to really go that mile. I mean, what is more vulnerable than not knowing who you're working with, not knowing what's going on, being sequestered in a room, like just full trust. It just shows in the film. It makes you really feel like you're watching like a documentary almost of two people that like met. Like it really feels super real. And for you and him, it feels real for you because it was real, like kind of getting to know each other in that way. And then you have another experience of really getting to know each other as people, as actors after the fact when you got to meet.
Right.
So it's, I don't know, it holds such a special place in my heart. I was so happy to reach out to you and talk to you because you just do such a great job in this film. And I don't know, I just love it. It's one of those things where it's like in your brain and I can't get it out of my brain. And I just love it. I love you in it. I love him in it. I love the idea of it. And I just want everybody to see it. And a lot of times I emphatically, go crazy on a rant of how much I love something. But for this one, seriously, like I can't get it out of my brain. Like it's just, I keep thinking about it and thinking about it and thinking about it. And I just want to congratulate you on it because I know, like I said, it was a while ago and I know you guys are finally getting to do press and it's finally out and there's been edits, but now it's on Amazon and hopefully it's going to be in a million places elsewhere and in theaters and all of these things. But you were so good in it.
Thank you so much. It's a really special film. And yes, and go watch it because it's unlike anything you'll ever see.
Hope you guys enjoyed listening to Callan and Cristina talk about what it was like filming with one another, what it was like doing this project, how kind of outrageous this film was, and how different and like mind-altering it was to film this movie, and the kind of things that they went to and the lengths they went through to make this film happen. It's so interesting. So hopefully you guys enjoyed listening to all of the little behind the stories, kind of details and secrets. If you're interested, please head over to Prime Video and rent or purchase this film. I'm telling you, you will not regret it. It is so good. It is also available on anywhere on demand that you can purchase a movie. So just Google it or search online. It's called About Him and Her. Please go rent it or buy it. I highly recommend it. It also has 100% on Rotten Tomatoes. So I'm telling you, please go check it out. It's so good. Let me know what you think after you watch it. And don't forget to hit the subscribe button so you're updated on all of our latest podcasts. And head over to our YouTube channel, hit subscribe so you're updated on all of our video content.